a fireside chat with Joe Lubin. So Joe is the founder of ConsenSys, which he founded back in 2014, but was also one of the co-founders of Ethereum. He's a very influential person in the space, and ConsenSys itself is involved in so many different initiatives, which is really because of Joe's underlying conviction in what the technology can actually achieve here. Joe, thank you first of all for making time. It's always great to chat and catch up, and certainly been have a few dialogues over the years.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks everyone for coming out. Importantly, in this context, maybe the most significant founding that I was associated with was ConsenSys being a founding member and prime driver of the EEA. Shout out to the EEA and those early formational moments.
Yeah, definitely. The EEA was so excited when it first launched. Like, this is just what enterprise folk wanted to see happen with Ethereum. So you started ConsenSys, as I said earlier, back in 2014, and this year, I think as an observer, there's been like a couple of really pivotal things that have happened with ConsenSys. So back in February, it was reported that MetaMask was earning $100,000 a day via its token swaps functionality, so big revenue driver. And then also in April, there was a $65 million funding round that ConsenSys closed, backed by the likes of JP Morgan, MasterCard, UBS, Protocol Labs, and the Maker Foundation. Is it fair to say that 2021 is like the year where you feel you're starting to really see the fruits of your labor and these bets that you've had this conviction for all this year pay off, or do you feel that you were there earlier, or there's still a lot more to happen, so to speak? Because this is massive news what's already happened in 2021.
Yeah, so payoff can mean monetary and numerical. I feel like we've seen so many things pay off over the years as we were a major contributor to standing up the Ethereum ecosystem, or the smart contracts blockchain ecosystem. The history of ConsenSys is that the mothership, ConsenSys Mesh, invested in a lot of projects, incubated a lot of projects, and spun out a lot of projects and built some of the most important projects in the space, developer tooling, wallet, etc. So some of the biggies are Infura and Truffle Developer Tool Suite, our customer success group, our diligence security audit group, Quorum, which is the name that we use for a wide variety of Ethereum node or client solutions, both public mainnet and enterprise focused. And the consumer piece, which is also becoming an institutional piece, MetaMask is doing astonishingly well. So those groups, in addition to a group called Codify, which builds financial primitives that we can launch into MetaMask for consumers or into Infura and Truffle for developers, and into Quorum for enterprises. Those pieces are part of a spin-out called ConsenSys Software Inc., which is a focused integrated software product company. And so ConsenSys Mesh and ConsenSys Software Inc. Proceed in parallel. ConsenSys Mesh manages portfolio and continues to incubate projects. So success, yeah, opening up the ecosystem, having many millions of monthly active users, being profitable is a nice thing. That round that you mentioned, the $65 million round, brought a bunch of major financial institutions into a situation where a bunch of organizations in our own ecosystem both invested into the formation round of ConsenSys Software Inc. And it was a validation of our convergence hypothesis, which is being increasingly validated. And that is that the revolutionaries would get out there and build out the infrastructure and start using the infrastructure, and the evolutionaries, organizations like Santander, JP Morgan, etc. Some of the pillars of this institution, the EEA, would maybe they're revolutionaries too, because they were early, but the ones behind them would take advantage of the technology in ways that they're comfortable, and ConsenSys has focused on making it comfortable to use Ethereum virtual machine based technology. And bottom line, it's happening. We've been projecting this for a long time, this decentralized future. Now we're living in the decentralized future. We've seen the blockchain, we've seen cryptocurrencies, we've seen other forms of digital assets, DeFi, and especially NFTs, crossing the chasm into mainstream awareness and adoption. We were part of the innovators and the early adopters, but now the early majority is coming across the chasm, and those technologies are what's doing it. So it's all very exciting, and we thought we were living life at exponential acceleration 5 years ago, and we still are. And exponential means that there's a lot to do each day.
Yeah, awesome. And you touched there on the crossing the chasm. Do you think that like NFTs specifically have kind of been the thing that's kind of been one of the big enablers? Well, it's been one of the big enablers, but do you think that's the pivotal thing that's that, or is it more that it's that plus DeFi plus the just wider awareness of crypto?
Well, as the technology matures, gets a little rounded around the edges, fewer sharp edges, it'll bring in higher and higher hanging fruit, more and more use cases, and it'll be usable by less deeply technologically savvy people. What's happening is a paradigm shift to a new way of building and organizing the world. So the web basically accomplished the democratization of access to information, ability to publish, ability to engage in e-commerce, stand up e-commerce, or do the same for social networks. And what we're seeing now is the democratization of the new foundations of the emerging decentralized digital economy. First foundation is the trust foundation. So that's protocols like Ethereum, the maximally decentralized protocols, layer ones, and the infrastructure like layer twos built on top of that. And it's democratized because it's not constructed by a small group of entities and controlled top down by centralized institutions. It is open to technologists, entrepreneurs to build, to fork, to modify, to fix rapidly, and to utilize. So that's the governance layer for the planet, essentially. And this new trust foundation is enabling the decentralized financial layer for the planet to be constructed. And that's also being done not by centralized institutions, but by people, entrepreneurs and technologists. And it's open and accessible and usable to hopefully everybody at some point soon. I lost my train of thought. Can leave it there.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
so I think you were talking about NFTs being the prime driver, and so yeah, it is a prime driver in opening up our ecosystem and the technology to just many more millions of people. And NFTs it is a profound invention. I think it's going to change the nature of software going forward. I think it's, software is composed of software objects, and now we have software objects that can have unique identity and can pay and be paid and can vote or decide and be voted on. And these software objects are going to enable creators or content owners to directly interact with the consumers or their fans without the intermediaries capturing a huge proportion of the value in those relationships, and the ability to wrap content and programmatically unbundle or bundle different kinds of rights around that content so that you could identify far more rights to certain content than was previously recognized. So streaming into certain kinds of formats or public performance. And that will just make it so much easier for so many more content creators to make a living. For the first time, really, we're noticing huge blockchain-based meetups and events, Clubhouse, etc., that we, the crypto savvy people, are not organizing. So artists are organizing them because it's just technology that enables something that they really care about.
Yeah, so it's the NFTs are kind of pulling people in because on the surface it's, you know, they can relate to it, but then they start scratching beneath the surface quite quickly and they start to realize how it can kind of be tying with all these other great things that are possible. Yeah. So continuing just discussing on the NFT side, because there's the Palm network that was that spun out of ConsenSys, or certainly it's, you know, a ConsenSys venture. Is that, you know, and you know, you've certainly had very significant success with the first project that was put on that with Damien Hirst's pieces there. Is this something that you know, I mean, I guess you're, you know, ConsenSys is obviously very excited about the possibilities with NFT. Do you see, you know, where do you see, I guess, Palm going in terms of, you know, this first stage is just doing these drops and giving people the opportunity to get involved with the collectibles, but there's got to be some bigger picture things about how it can start to tie into some other parts of the ecosystem potentially. Is there kind of a roadmap or ideas floating around your head about that side at this point in time?
Sure. Yeah. So ConsenSys and other companies and people in our ecosystem have been doing NFTs for a pretty long time. They weren't always called NFTs. Our Ujo project issued, it's a music platform project, issued NFTs a long time ago. Ethereum was tracking fish and consumer products with NFTs. Ethereum has also launched Euler Beats, a really successful generative art NFT set of projects. And Palm is indeed a network that the ConsenSys stood up. There's a company called Palm NFT Studios, which is related, and it's essentially a digital design interactive studio that helps companies build platforms or do launches. ConsenSys stood up this network because there was a need to create a low cost, extremely low carbon footprint or energy footprint sidechain using exactly the same Ethereum technologies, MetaMask and Pura, that had a bridge, so it was intimately connected to Ethereum mainnet, so you can move different kinds of tokens across the bridge, and that was also very interested in enabling the creator. So a creator DAO is in formation, and it will be funded by a large number of Palm tokens. I shouldn't perhaps use the term funded because these Palm tokens have no value. As we all know, they're just nice tokens that we're putting into the DAO, and people can petition the DAO for some of those tokens in exchange for getting some work done. And perhaps most importantly, there hasn't been a really great platform on which DeFi could be built specifically for NFTs. So in the traditional economy, we have these fungible tokens like money and shares in companies, and a lot of financial infrastructure built up around that. But there's an enormous amount of value in non-fungible assets, title, mortgages, invoices, etc. And a lot of infrastructure around that in the traditional world. And we're going to see a lot of DeFi infrastructure, automated market makers, lending, borrowing systems, insurance, etc. All build up that is very similar to the fungible token infrastructure, but a little bit different in some cases. So the AMMs will have to be a bit different. And I anticipate that NFTs will play a huge role in providing collateral to different situations. So Palm is indeed an exciting project, and the Damien Hirst launch was spectacular. There's more experimentation, I think, going to be built on that project, and there's a huge backlog or pipeline of different launches that are lined up that are extremely exciting. There's another one that went really well.
Yeah, no, this is going to be awesome to see these drops happening. And to your point there about the DeFi type support of NFTs. So recent news, for instance, was the marketplace OpenSea actually launching their own tokens so that they can start to move towards DAO type governance. And it got me thinking, is that almost like the first step towards that world, which is a bit more analogous to what's happening, within the DeFi space with AMMs and so on, and that you start to, have that DAO-based structure behind the scenes, and then you have a token there that can reward the actual people selling on top of the platforms.
Yeah, so I do think we're in the early days of DAOs, but they're getting very significant. It's going to become absolutely necessary, in my opinion, to have decentralized governance for many projects if you want to be successful. The approach to regulatory issues, structures, complications is a really interesting one. The SEC a while ago came out with this doctrine of sufficient decentralization. And so if you can demonstrate that your project is really genuinely decentralized, then I think that's going to go a long way to defining a new kind of structure, a new kind of collective structure that needs to be seen differently and treated differently by regulators. And there's some incredibly cool, innovative things happening. There's a lot of tooling sprouting up around DAOs. We have a project called Sobel that essentially enables you to view your organization, your flat organization, or your organization that might be composed of circles, overlapping circles, circles within circles, each representing initiatives, projects, teams, etc. And that tool, which is a really remarkable tool, we've used it for quite a while at ConsenSys, is starting to get really intimate with different DAO projects and providing some of that infrastructure and other voting systems, treasury management systems have been sprouting up that are really exciting. Our friends at Gnosis have built some important pieces to that, and people are building on top of Gnosis specifically for DAOs. The Lao infrastructure is really exciting. Flamingo, Neptune, Gitcoin DAO is exciting. Party DAO is incredibly exciting. So it basically enabled a group of people to kind of in real time organize themselves and establish ownership, purchase collectively, and fractionalize an NFT that they can then legitimately use as their on their profile. Fun stuff in the DAO space, and so much work to do as it becomes probably the main way that we organize ourselves in this coming age of community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an exciting area that seems you wonder if that's going to be the next big thing that kind of comes to the forefront within blockchain after NFTs and DeFi. Yeah. So just touching a bit more on DeFi, how are you seeing like established institutions trying to get exposure to it? Because MetaMask has got an institutional offer, I believe, and also, of course, given who ConsenSys's backers were as well, with some of the big names in finance behind you, there's obviously a lot of interest there too. So it'd be great to get your perspective on what in your view, what it kind of looks like, the institutionalization of DeFi.
So with respect to regulatory issues, we expect that people will continue to be able to publish software, and that when there are custody issues involved, securities issues involved, and maybe some interfaces for consumers to this published software, there may be some regulatory implications. We've been paying attention to regulatory implications in what is a fork of our MetaMask client. So MetaMask is really designed for consumers, and we're adding more financial primitives into it. The financial primitives that we operate are essentially interfaces to underlying financial primitives that other projects publish, and we're able to aggregate some of those things and provide a really great experience to them. So swaps is out there, fiat onboarding is out there in MetaMask already, and more to come. With respect to MetaMask institutional, it adds different kinds of risk management, KYC, KYT, which is know your transaction, part of AML capabilities, reporting, tax reporting at some point, and within an institution, whether it's a trading institution or just one of the increasingly large number of companies that are taking crypto in their business as payment, they are all going to need to understand their workflow, understand the security around who's able to do what sorts of transactions. And so we're paying a lot of attention to building the workflow and making different roles, different permissions explicit, and enabling organizations to be internally secure and implement their processes. Institutions themselves, Michael Saylor has done a great job of activating corporations to think about what's going on with state-issued money, that it's depreciating and not yielding very much. And Justin Drake has done a really great job of alerting lots of people about what's going on with ultrasound money. So Bitcoin is digitally sound money, gold is sound money, and Ethereum is fast becoming ultrasound money, a deflationary asset. And we're going to see a lot of organizations people and organizations move from that sort of weaker monetary system into this growing monetary system, where the assets are growing in value and yielding significantly. And even so, hedge funds, the smaller financial institutions have been aware of this for quite a while. Major multi-billion-dollar funds are now deploying money in the space, and even the more conservative financial institutions are tooling up, if not active already, but they have to be slow movers because they're regulated, and it's going to take a little more time for them to get permission from their internal and external legal counsel, probably.
And expanding on that, is it something that you feel that there's kind of limits there in terms of how far we can go? Because as you referenced the notion of ultrasound money, and this idea that with the fractional reserve banking system, monetary system that kind of underpins a lot of our nations, you've kind of got that narrative. But then on the other side, you've got these these central banks looking at central bank digital currency approaches, and with that sort of approach, it doesn't kind of change it's still states managed a lot of these centrally manage these different currency systems, and CDBCs with blockchain can make it more efficient, but it doesn't kind of change the narrative and move it towards this idea of ultrasound money. So do you envisage that we're, at one level you've got the kind of more maximalist view, which is like everyone's going to go to the ultrasound money, the decentralized, codes defined digital assets, but then on the other side you've got regulators who no doubt that there's going to come a point where they're not happy with everyone just jumping to these other monetary systems. And so where do you feel that the kind of the right balance is, and do you have any insights into where the regulators feel it needs to be, because they're not going to want everyone to be as radical, say, as Michael Saylor with adopting Bitcoin as their primary reserves?
So nation states should have their own token, and they should be using the best technology to implement their own money system, and it should be aligned with their own philosophical, political principles. We will see. So ConsenSys is doing a bunch of work on central bank digital currency projects with different central banks around the world. There's significant interest. It's hard to say adoption at this point because it's still early for central banks. Some are further along than others, but the Ethereum technology is in the lead, in my opinion, in terms of interest from central banks. Partly because it's just a rock solid technology compared to many other technologies, even if it's only used for cryptocurrency. But I think there's an understanding that, hey, if you're a central bank, you don't just want to stand up a monetary system. You might want to think about the future and realize that your monetary system should probably support smart contracts, because monetary system is going to be a foundational layer for the whole economy. Central banks increasingly, so they certainly have dominance, if not monopoly, on being the money system in the nation state. They're increasingly competitive with one another because some of them influence or have regional influence and regional usage for their money. Some of them have global usage for their money, EU, and primarily the US. And this competition is really interesting. They're going to have to make technological decisions that enable them to continue to do business and do business well, because it is, after all, a nation state level business. But they're also facing challenges from open systems, from Ether and Ethereum and Bitcoin and others. And that's going to cause them to make design decisions that will enable them to keep up with the capabilities offered by these other systems, and also make decisions about how they want to interoperate with other networks. So the BIS is doing some work to link up different CBDC projects, or at least facilitate the linking at some point in the future. And it'll be really interesting if and when these nation state money systems connect up to permissionless smart contract platforms, potentially. And it may be the case that, let's say, the Federal Reserve token could be permissionlessly mirrored and wrapped on Ethereum, for instance. So if you, for instance, freeze it on the Fed network or whatever that ends up being, you could issue a sort of wrapped version on the other network. So fascinating times coming in the future with respect to how nation state currencies and other digital assets interoperate. Most important to me, I think, is choice. There should be lots of optionality so that we can build different kinds of monetary systems and choose the right ones for the use case.
You can almost see it playing out where like these nation states start to launch their own projects, like all these different decentralized projects do. And it's like, if you subscribe to our token, then you get healthcare, you get education, you get all these perks that come, I guess, with tax revenue. So it's just really cool to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, the country of Facebook tried to do that.
Yeah, true. So let's just move to some of like I guess the bigger industry trends. What do you think of Elon Musk's impact on crypto and blockchain more generally?
Well, first, his impact on the planet is just amazing. Awesomely talented human being, doing great things in interesting ways for all of us. First thing to notice is that memes signaling is incredibly powerful, especially as the world is configured right now, with social networking making it a very small world for many people. It's great when he embraced Bitcoin. He sort of made positive noises about Ethereum early on, and made a lot of positive barking sounds around Doge. So he embraced Bitcoin, then he had to pull back basically because of the perceived energy issues, carbon issues. And that was not because he just did an analysis and suddenly realized, hey, Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity. It was basically because he has grants and other sorts of things that that he needed to not endanger, and so I think he's navigated that situation pretty well. Doge is the same technology, so roughly it's Litecoin based technology, so a little bit different. Would be subject to the same sorts of problems if it got really big. So it's great that he's paying attention and validating our ecosystem from his perch. He certainly likes attention. He likes running little mini social experiments by putting out a word or a phrase and seeing how all the humans scurry and try to interpret it. I feel like it'd be nice if he understood how impactful his utterances are, because an utterance can be taken very seriously and impact lots of people, both positively and perhaps negatively if they're financially exposed. And most importantly, no doubt he and his companies have deep strategies that they'll weave into their products and services. So I'm looking forward to seeing Tesla, SpaceX, power, electricity infrastructure, robots, etc., all be natively adopting the cryptocurrency and decentralized protocol infrastructure in interesting ways, especially the flamethrowers. Really interesting to see how he weaves cryptocurrencies into his flamethrower product.
Yeah, it's just this kind of product that he put out there. So one of the things comes up. I mean, personally, I've always thought of Ethereum a bit like Linux, in that it's more than a technology. It's a movement, because it's, at its heart, it's got some solid technology there. But the bigger thing is like you've got all these passionate people around the world who form this community who really believe in what they're building. And so that, to me, when I just looked at blockchain, was really what pulled me towards Ethereum. However, there's a couple of kind of, I guess, other views that some people have. Some people talk in terms of, Ethereum might be hot right now, but it's the MySpace of the Web3. It's like there's lots of people using it, but it's not going to be the thing that we're. Or there's other projects who are thinking, oh well, let's make Bitcoin more like Ethereum, and add DeFi to it. Let's create a new layer one technology to displace Ethereum. I mean, what's kind of your view on that, and why people feel compelled there? I mean, if someone came to you with any of those narratives, how would you respond?
So first, I and ConsenSys believe in a world of many kinds of decentralized protocols, many doing different things, many doing very similar things, and all linked up in useful ways and interoperating with one another. So basically, we're seeing the formation of the increasingly decentralized web, and it feels a little bit silly to equate Ethereum to an application. The MySpace application used a bunch of technologies: HTTP, HTML, TCP/IP, etc. And Ethereum is much closer to that layer. So it's closer to the enabling foundational infrastructure of the web than it is to just an application that ran on the web. But your point is, will it go away, be replaced by Ethereum killers? First, I think it's really great and necessary for our ecosystem to broadly explore the solution space. And Ethereum has certainly established itself as the leading candidate to be a major component in the foundational layer, the trust layer of the digital future, and the digital asset settlement layer, maybe the decentralized finance hub of the digital future. There will be many other projects and many layer twos that are building on Ethereum as a layer one, or other layer ones, many layer ones that will connect laterally to Ethereum. So I don't know, it's still early in the development of our ecosystem, but Ethereum has established itself as the hub that everything is connecting to, and the reference that nearly everything is comparing itself against or riffing off of. And so no concerns about Ethereum going away. I think it will remain foundational and a major component of the infrastructure going forward. And it's there's some great projects out there, but Ethereum is so far ahead in terms of size of ecosystem, number of transactions per day, amount of value flowing, amount of value being created, and number of new projects and new technologists entering the ecosystem. The Ethereum 2 project is about to merge with the Ethereum 1 execution network and enable Ethereum to catch up and leapfrog significantly with respect to scalability. Layer 2s are already doing that. So it's really exciting to see significant scalability and cost reductions on Ethereum. But hopefully lots of those great projects will via different architectures or different tunings of different architectures developed to subserve different kinds of use cases, very similar to how different database technologies, Graph, SQL, NoSQL, etc., do subserve different kinds of use cases on our current compute infrastructure.
And yeah, and you mentioned there the upcoming merge with Ethereum, and that's something that ConsenSys has invested very heavily in their R&D. And Ben Edgington was here last month talking about what is the cutting edge there. So it must be great to kind of see it finally getting close, because it's something that's no doubt there's a lot of time's been invested into to get to this point.
Shout out to Ben Edgington. He's up there and he's doing a spectacular job in steering ConsenSys in the Ethereum 2 direction and helping steer the whole ecosystem, the whole Ethereum 2 ecosystem.
That's good. This is going to be awesome when the cut over hands. Right, so we're going to just turn it over to the audience. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. If people have any other questions they'd like to ask, please put them in. I can't guarantee we'll get through them all, but it'd certainly be good if there's some burning questions people have. So this is one from Francis Hui. Between adopting an existing public blockchain such as Ethereum versus building their own, where do you see the central banks would be leaning towards and why?
So the quick answer is they have a lot of responsibility. They need to be extremely prudent. They need to move slowly and not break entire economies. And so they will stand up their own solutions on their own networks. They will likely build bridges in time, or other people will build bridges to public permissionless systems. And my view is that the public permissionless infrastructure should be at the foundation of everything going forward, and that we'll see private permissioned networks in the form of just software-defined networks, applications be built on top of permissionless infrastructure, just the same way the internet is. And, at its foundations, the internet technology is permissionless. It's grown up in layers, and the higher level layers are regulated, but you can stand up your own internet if you want to, and if you can figure out how to connect into the main internet, then you have permissionlessly become part of the internet.
And what's your view on the US government and Fed's attitude towards cryptocurrencies? Do you expect more hostile regulations or warm embraces from this point on?
Both, absolutely. So we don't expect, we expect some people to attempt to shut things down or really slow things down so that they can position themselves for this paradigm shift. We don't expect, first of all, many things that have been discussed are impossible to implement, and regulators will realize that. Rule makers, like people in Treasury and the IRS, will make sensible rules once given mandates from the politicians. And bottom line, the kerfuffle that we listened to a couple of weeks ago around the infrastructure bill was really great for our ecosystem. It put cryptocurrency explicitly on the tax radar, a healthy thing. It awakened 100 senators to the fact that in the United States, to the fact that there's this massive thing going on worth trillions of dollars, and they're trying to backdoor regulate it. And I think it was Ted Cruz. I think he was speaking to that body, and he basically said something like, 95 of you have no clue about what this technology is and how it works, and we all need to get some education before we attempt to make laws that will sort of implicitly regulate it. So I think it's all going to go very well. We at ConsenSys are really comfortable that things that we care about won't be improperly or poorly regulated. And if there's some light regulation around the edges, especially the gateways between the financial or the traditional financial ecosystem and the decentralized ecosystem, and it's already significantly regulated. But even a little bit more is probably not going to be. They won't turn every individual and smart contract into a virtual asset service provider that needs to spy on and report on all of its peers.
Cool. And do you have time for another couple of questions? I'm mindful that
Sure.
we're on the hour now, so just okay. So another one from Timothy Coleman. As a follow-up, as ConsenSys has been moving from a spokes model to separating the tech and investment arms, do you believe in the blockchains for hashes, databases for data view of some players in the space? And if so, how could this lead to a change in the tech side at ConsenSys 5 years down the line?
So there's certainly lots of use cases with respect to blockchains for hashes, sort of validation of what went on. There are technologies like Baseline that enables organizations to sync up their internal systems of record, processes and data and agreements with those of counterparties and use Ethereum mainnet to basically serve as a global, again, system of record to log zero knowledge proofs that keep those disparate systems in sync. Most of the enterprise, the really successful enterprise projects are around provenance or digital assets. So we do a bunch of work on that front. We have products on that front. We are in the middle of launching something called a Quorum blockchain service, which is a managed service on Azure, and essentially working intimately with Microsoft to migrate many hundreds of projects potentially from Azure blockchain service to Quorum blockchain service. And so we will see a bunch of those traditional use cases, and there's some good ones out there. There are a lot of companies using blockchain in a private permission context, including Microsoft itself. So we'll see those persist. We're focusing on enabling enterprise to access mainnet, to access DeFi, to access especially NFTs increasingly, and we see a convergence coming, and are building out the tools for that.
Cool. And a final question, this is from Jack. Do you see low code or maybe even no code playing a significant role in getting more people building on top of Ethereum? Of course, there's challenges with things like, for newbies working with wallets and so on. What's your view?
Absolutely. We have a no code, low code specialist who's been thinking about and building some of that stuff for a long time in a more traditional context. And he's about to be unleashed in that direction.
Cool. I look forward to an announcement soon. Joe, it's been fantastic to host you here today, and thanks again. It's been really good, great just to hear your views on where we are. Just wonderful to see where we are now in 2021. respect to blockchain and where ConsenSys has got to in the overall ecosystem. I'm sure 12 months from now we'll be all well, it'll be less than that, 6 months or less. We'll be celebrating the being off proof of stake as well. Proof of work, and transitioned onto proof of stake. So plenty still to happen, but yeah, really excited to just hear everything that yourself and ConsenSys have been doing.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, everyone.